Good evening, park managers, and welcome back. It's another lovely day in the Dino Dales, and we've got, 3 enclosures up to now, with obviously today a brand new enclosure we're going to start making. I've made it now so babies do not grow up, as my Sauropelta babies are now adults and still looking great. I'm loving the grouping of Sauropeltas in that enclosure. I might have to remove a few anyways. It seems a bit weird having so many so close together. But anyways, let's get on to the build. So today's creature I've decided to pick is going to be our first carnivore. We've had 3 herbivore enclosures, and I've decided I'm going to make a carnivore enclosure. Now, I feel like I've seen it a few times now come up in questions on other people's channels and things like that, is how would you keep a prehistoric carnivore in an enclosure like what you'd see in a modern day zoo, and what would you use, what would you look at? Now, contrary to belief, like obviously when you play Evolution, you see them break through steel bars and reinforce concrete and things like that. It's like, yeah, they were big animals. Yeah, they were heavy animals. Maybe a T-Rex at a push would be able to do such a feat, but even then, it's like, what's the payoff for the animal doing that? If it's in the enclosure, getting well fed, and being like looked after, why would it need to break out? Obviously, if it's again badly looked after, then it's going to get broken out. But the majority of the case when it comes to zoos, especially zoos that I've been to, all animals are really well looked after. They don't really have a reason to escape unless it's curiosity, and then that's really usually down to simple things as being able to dig under the enclosure. So the kind of basis I've chosen for my Metriacanthosaurus is the actual looks of the enclosure are based off rhino enclosures. Like, I've looked at several different rhino enclosures. I picked what I liked the best of looking, and that's what I've chosen to do in this enclosure. Now, even like a big hard wooden log would be fairly hard to break through, especially if it's in the ground well. So that's what we're going to go into that a little bit later. So right now I'm building a viewing gallery. Now, it would be kind of cool if we in the future were able to change the camera view to where you want it on the viewing gallery. So if you're not into this kind of viewing gallery, I feel like for my zoo, it's not going to fit. It's not often you'd see a gallery like this to view animals, in a sense. Obviously, this is obviously for Jurassic World, and that's how they used to view the animals there. But I feel like it'd be nice to change the camera. So what I'm doing right here is I'm basing this off a hide. So like a hunter's hide or a bird watching hide. And the picture I use is more for just bird watching. I'm pretty sure it's on the coast watching seabirds, and there's this nice little wooden shack with windows all the way around the front and then on the side as well. It was lifted up in the air, but obviously I can't do that here without showing off some of the actual building itself. So we're just doing it straight to the ground with a stone base. I'm going to add little tiny windows for people to peep through at the Metriacanthosaurus, because the idea is we're going to go for a pine forest at the front of the enclosure and have it fairly dense for them to move around with the odd channels and open spaces, so you can still see the animals from the path as well as being obviously able to see them from this little hide. I also decorated it up a little bit as well. I thought I'd put a living wall on the side of it. I thought that looked really nice, and using ferns and other plants similar to what's growing around our actual zoo into this build will just make it pop a little bit different, just break up that wooden look, which I love the wooden look. It's really cool. I enjoyed making this little building. This building as well is on the workshop if you wish to add it to your zoos, and if you're going to add it to Metriacanthosaurus, the sign of Metriacanthosaurus hide is already on there, but if you want to, you can quite easily just take the words off and change it to whatever animal you want to use this in. I feel like this would be perfect for those kind of country park, wildlife area kind of builds, because it sort of blends in with the environment, using natural stone, using natural wood, and then having this nice little living wall on the side to have the plants just there. Also adds a really cool vibe that feels like it blends in with nature. Anyways, onto the fence. So the main part near the entrance area, or the entrance area, the viewing gallery area, should I say, we're going to be using these logs really close together so that the metros can't slip through. They're going to be buried in the ground, and eventually, when I get around to it, I'm going to be adding like loads of rocks around it, so then it would be difficult to traverse and actually push over and get through. And this would be just enough. Like, these are really thick and big logs compared to the metro, so this would be definitely enough to be able to keep these critters in, unless they end up being like full Hulk mode, like the animals seem to be in Jurassic World, just barreling through buildings like they're absolutely nothing compared to them. But Metro's, luckily, it's not like a massive carnivore like T-Rex. It's still a really big carnivore, and a really cool and beautiful looking. Like, Frontier have made like a lovely Metro skin. Like, it just looks so nice, like the way it's shaped, as well as the colours that we can get to pick for this critter. But obviously, we've got this bit on the back there. We've got the raised wall full of rocks. That's going to be enough to keep it in. And then I make a very simple fence that you'd see knocking around like rhino enclosures, especially in their offshore areas, those being those iron bars, enough that the head can't get through. Obviously, further enough from the path that the staff, if they fall over, they don't get too close to it. But it's just one of those things where, like, I feel like when we talk about carnivores and prehistoric animals, the carnivores, like the Metriacanthosaurus, for example, is not the most dangerous thing you can have in your park. And believe it or not, the most dangerous animal you could have in your park is a sauropod. Like, those things, huge, dangerous, heavy. If it's like a brachiosaurus and it throws up on you from the kind of height, if the throw up lands on you, it's going to crush you and do a lot of serious damage and possibly even kill you. So yeah, I feel like for me, the struggle won't be trying to get carnivores into the park. It'd be trying to justify enclosures for sauropods. Maybe some of the smaller ones, maybe Diplodocus would be fairly easy to keep in, but Brachiosaurus, Patagotitan, those guys, they're going to be difficult to like kind of figure out what a real world enclosure for those animals would be without having something looking really weird. I mean, to be honest, they if they were real life animals, or they are real life, but if they were alive today, I feel like people would find a way to house them safely. But it'd be a case of one of those things. This animal is huge. This animal needs to constantly eat. So you got the danger factors. You already have like a very costly enclosure to try and keep that animal in, and then as well you have the uptake of the feed for the animal, the constant cleaning of the enclosure, because I can imagine the dung being stupendously big and a bit of a task to clean up. It's not like keeping an elephant is keeping a brachiosaurus. So yeah, anyways, going back to this enclosure, we're drifting off to a future project. We're currently making like this pine forest. I really wanted like a pine forest knocking around in here. Obviously, pine wood is fast growing trees, so you can imagine when they built this enclosure, they just planted these trees, and that's why it doesn't really fit in with the rest of the enclosure. But because it's a soft wood, it grows really quickly. It's going to be quite easy to like plant all this kind of stuff in here at a younger age, and then eventually it'll grow up to be taller and taller, and doesn't take as long as for like a hardwood tree, for example, like some of the plants that we already have knocking around. Also, I use the hardwood tree saplings as part of the decoration around the outside of the enclosure, which kind of makes sense because it looks nice, and obviously it stays young for longer because it's a hardwood. And right now I'm making fake enrichment for the animal. I've done a lot of fake enrichment and feeding items for the herbivores, and I hadn't done much for the carnivores. I did one off camera for a smaller carnivore, so that'd be in the meat rope pool, and I was like, oh, it'd be kind of cool. I can't remember the line enclosure that I saw it in, but there was this like zip line meat hanger, and it was so cool because by the time I got to the enclosure, they'd just let the lions out and they'd already hung up a nice piece of meat on this zip line. So it wasn't lions, it was tigers, and they grabbed hold of it, and obviously they were trying to keep it still whilst trying to rip chunks of meat off this leg as it's just there dangling on the zip line, and it was really cool to watch. And I feel like it'd be kind of awesome to see a dinosaur do that. The next piece of enrichment for this enclosure is this fake dummy, prey dummy as you want to call it. Now the idea behind it is you would probably put like cardboard boxes on, but there's no cardboard boxes in the game, so I used a wooden box. We used the barrel as well. The barrel will be harder, lasts a little longer, but in the head, like you can imagine that being a cardboard box, you could put in like little bits of meat in there. You could use it as a sensory item by rubbing different oils in there, like fish oils or again meat oils onto it, to just make it smell interesting. And that's the whole part of enrichment, is just to get the animal's brain working, to like thinking, what is this, what can I do with it, get some investigating it, biting it, chewing, hitting it around, just something fun for the animal. And also it's entertaining for the guests to watch. Obviously these are decorational and we're all playing into that story mode, in the sense of this is a real life working zoo, the Dino Dales, and this is how I'd make enclosures for these animals if they were alive today, and just adding that little bit of flair of enrichment and just interesting enclosure design aspects. But yeah, this was fun. I enjoyed making my first carnivore enclosure. I think my next enclosure is going to be something small, so I would need to decide what creature on there, like a small exhibit that would be like kind of in between enclosures and things like that. I've already got plans for a Spinosaurid kind of enclosure where you want to use Sarco, Barry and Spino. That's in the plans a little bit later down the line. I was sort of figured out how I'm going to do it. But anyways, I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and I hope it's giving you some inspiration. Let me know in the comments, do you enjoy this? Did you enjoy this a little longer video? I had to cut it down a bit because it's like 2 hours of game footage that I edited up. But yeah, that's going to be me for today. And as always, thank you for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.
What's your story?